Okay, I'm live. Nobody's here yet. What's going on? I am going to be fixing this guitar today. I'm going to try and get a little better camera angle for you. And then I'm just going to grab a chair from right here so I can sit down and work on this. 1 second. Okay. Oh, good. All right. There's a couple people here already. I will give a full tour of the studio when it's not a giant pit like it is right now. It's kind of a mess. So, hey, what's up, Mike? What's going on? So anyway, I'll show you the guitar I'm working on tonight. This is a Squier Strat. Hey, Chris, what's going on? So this is a filthy Squier Strat that I fixed for a friend. Kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, he kind of dropped off the face of the earth. So I'm going to fix it up again and try to get a hold of him so I can give it back to him. But in the meantime, I can, get it fixed up, use it a little bit. It does sound very good for a Squier Strat, and it's got this really pretty, I don't know if you can see it, there's actually some figuring. It's like some nice flame to the neck. So it's actually a really good guitar. It sounds really good, but the impetus for all of this is the output jack was cacked. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch my soldering iron on, and we're gonna just clean this up, do some real basic stuff. I'm gonna run through some setup stuff. I've got a pack of strings here. I'm gonna restring it. I'm not gonna do like a fret leveling or anything like that, but I am going to, do an A to Z setup on it. So I'm going to, clean it up, solder the jack in, and then string it, and then go through the setup step by step. I was gonna maybe take the pick guard off and clean the electronics, but I don't think I'm gonna do that tonight. But I am gonna end up using this Deoxit. So this is all you need for working on guitars. Deoxit D5 is the one you want to buy. A can like this is like 14 bucks. It'll last you forever if all you're doing is working on your own stuff. It's pretty great. So I have a ton of tools and stuff like that. I've been doing this forever. I need a new toolbox because it's kind of overflowing. But there's only really a handful of tools you need. I really like a good string winder that has a cutter built in. This is my favorite one. This is the Planet Waves one. I have a Radio Shack soldering iron, but I also have a couple of Metcals to my left for kind of the more intense work. So I have a pedal board workbench right next to me that's just for building pedals. And then this is my guitar workbench. So I've had this soldering iron for like 15 years. And then my little brother, who's also an engineer, he sent me this Metcal soldering iron. So we've got a really nice soldering setup for the all the pedals and stuff that I have that I can build. So is audio okay, guys? I just want to make sure levels are okay because this is a phone. I didn't really set anything up. So as long as audio is good, I just need a yay or a nay. Awesome, perfect. This phone's actually really good. So I'm gonna actually turn on this light too. I've got a ring light that everything's mounted to. So let me switch it on, and hopefully you guys can see a little better. So that should be illuminated a little better for you now too, because I've got a ring light here. So I'm just gonna start with cleaning really quick. So I'll show you the basics of what I do. You can see this thing is absolutely filthy. It's covered in dust. So the first thing we want to do just to keep from like mashing the dust into it is just use a clean dry cloth to just knock the dust off. So, hey, what's going on, Sean? So really quick pass, just knock all the loose dust and stuff off. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but this thing is pretty dusty, so I like to get all the dust off before I do anything else. And so, only takes a second. And then I'll do a polish at the end. This is just going to be a cleaning step. And so I pretty much use a couple of different things, though. So Guitar Nomad, Guitar Detailer is good. It's cheap. Dunlop 65 polish is great for cleaning and polishing. This is actually my preferred polish. And then I also have some Dunlop 65 fretboard oil. A few other things, but those are kind of my go-tos that anytime a guitar touches my bench, that's what I'm going to use. I do, if necessary, have another Music Nomad product. This is a full set of nut files. This was not cheap. These are diamond nut files for shaping a nut. Makes it really effortless because they're gauged. So I've got them all the way down to, what is it, a 0.01? So, if you got like a 9-gauge high E, something like that, and all the way up to 130, so I can do guitar or bass with this one set. It's great. It makes it a little easier. It's gonna be hilarious. You'll laugh when you see what I actually typically use. I have the cheapest little crappy set of needle files that I've probably had for 15 years. And I've probably made 200 or 300 nuts with this crappy little set of files. For shaping nuts, and especially for the trick that I like to do, there's this one that has a slightly conical tip. You know, it's round, but one trick that I like to do, I'm going to point the camera down so you can see a little better. You got to make sure the nut's in frame. So, there we go. So you guys can see right here on the nut. Bring it down a little more so it's out of the text. There we go. So one thing that's really important to make your guitar stay in tune is that your nut slots aren't binding. So they need to be cut to the appropriate size. That's not an issue, but the back side of the nut here, not the front side, you don't really want to mess with this too much unless it's too high. But the back side is where it actually tends to stick. So if you take a round file like this, especially one that has a conical tip, and you just address the back of the nut, we're not touching the front, just the back. If you just kind of open that up just a little bit on the back side so that the slots are slightly V-shaped towards the headstock, you're going to be way less likely to have any kind of sticking. So if you can see this slot right here, it's just opened up a little bit more on the headstock side, just a little bit. And so, you know, I don't know how many tuner sales I've cost my bosses over the years where people come in to buy a full set of new tuners and I put their guitar on my bench for 15 seconds and then they walk out happy buying something else because they didn't need goddamn tuners. So anyway, I already kind of did that to this guitar, but I always like to show it. And now that it's naked, that's just a good time to mess with the nut a little bit. So real quick, I'm just going to show you how I clean. I have separate rags and I label them with a Sharpie. So like this one says fretboard oil on it, so I don't want to use that on the body. I like these big fluffy microfiber ones because they're soft, they don't hold a lot of debris, and they're really efficient at cleaning. So this stuff sprays out, mists out really light. So, you know, I'm just going to give the body like 2 or 3 spritzes per side, and then I'm just going to hit it. And this stuff, the reason I like this stuff is it comes off like a dream, and like, you see how shiny that is already? Like, it didn't take any effort. So when you do this as much as I have, when you find a tool that makes it faster, and especially like I worked at a guitar shop where, you know, I had 5 or 6 guitar repairs sitting there at all times. So, and I didn't like people to have to wait, so I always had a really fast turnaround time too. So anytime I find a tool that makes it faster or easier to do what I do, I tend to gravitate to it and stick with it. So that is my very basic cleaning routine. That, you know, clean cloth, polish, nothing, right? This fretboard is a little stinky, so I'm gonna give it a little love with some lemon oil here. And this is Formula 65 Ultimate Lemon Oil. Good stuff. It's got an applicator built right into it, which is this little guy. You gotta be careful if you squeeze it too hard while it's upside down, that'll shoot out and you'll have lemon oil all over your lap. Ask me how I know. So I'm gonna grab that aforementioned fretboard oil rag, and this you just apply straight onto the fretboard. I just kind of like to hold it upside down and give it a little squeeze, and I just kind of hit every space on the fretboard very quickly. And I am going to go fast. If I skip over anything, if you have any questions, let me know. I will slow down. I will show you whatever you want to see, answer any questions you might have. So just going to get all of the frets. And some people will let it like soak in. I don't actually find that to be super necessary. I would rather do it more than once than douse it in oil and then have to clean up a bunch of oil. So you should see the color instantly change. Basically rosewood, this is an older board, this is probably Indian rosewood. They get a little kind of a whitish tinge to them, I guess, when they're you know, when they're dry. So this should have a nice little sheen to it, but it shouldn't be, you know, still wet. But you know, that's night and day. This is a good opportunity to clean the fingerboard too. If you have an old credit card, this is an old skate park ID from a million years ago. This is the best for like quickly cleaning a fretboard because you can just use it as a scraper. It's not harder than the wood, so it's not going to scrape up the wood. But if there's a little crud on the fretboard next to a fret, for example, you can just kind of get in there with the card and just kind of knock that crud out of there. And then once the crud's loosened up, you just take your rag and get it out of there. So really easy. Nothing to it really. So I'm kind of done with this part already. So now I'm ready to move on to the next thing. The first thing I like to do is just kind of give everything a once over and just kind of make a mental note of anything that needs to be done. So I'm going to start at the headstock, and I'm just going to kind of give each tuner a little wiggle. This one's loose, that one's a little loose, that one's loose, that one's loose, that one's tight. So those need to be addressed. I've got yet another Music Nomad product, this little guitar screwdriver kit. It's fantastic. It has wrenches. Every wrench you'd ever need for most guitars is right here. And so this is going to handle our nuts. So I'm just going to tighten every one of these, not super tight, really just snug to the wrist. That's done. Then I'm going to give each tuner a turn, make sure they're not sticking or anything gross like that. That's done too. I like to line the holes up just to make restringing faster. So I'll do that real fast while I'm up here. And then we're pretty much heading down the neck. So, you know, the truss rod's here. I don't have to worry about taking any truss rod covers off or anything like that. If there was, now would be the time I would do it. I'm going to go ahead and solder this input jack in. So I'm going to move this around. This is going to take mere seconds because it's literally 2 solder joints and they're very small and very easy. So I've got my jack and I've got a little helping hand. It's got a couple alligator clips on it, so your hands are both free. Very, very handy. If you don't have one and you want to do any soldering, that's what you need. So I'm just going to kind of orient it so the tabs are both exposed for me. My soldering iron's already hot. It's at 740 or so, and my tip is already tinned, but I'm going to tin it a little more and clean it. If you don't know what tinning a tip is, you just take a little solder and you put it on your tip. It should be nice and shiny. And then I've got a little solder cleaner out of frame here, and I'll just kind of clean that. And now that's real shiny and nice. So that just means it's going to conduct the heat really quickly. So let me see if I can move this into frame a little better. Okay, there you go. You guys should be able to see this right here. And so all I'm going to do, there's already solder on here. Normally there's not, so I like to pre-tin everything. And what that means is you just put a little solder on there before you start trying to, you know, stick 2 things together. So there we go. That's pre-tinned. Normally you would apply a little solder there. I'm going to go all the way down to the body now where the input jack is, or output jack, I guess I should say. You're not going to have as good of a view of this, but I'm going to go fast. So basically, I'm just going to pre-tin this lead. There we go. That's tinned. The ground is tinned. That's done. So got my jack. I've fixed these in under 2 minutes before in live situations, like under the gun. I can fix them really fast if you have to. If you're not under the gun like that, yeah, I don't recommend it. So one thing you have to pay attention to is there's 2 lugs on your output jack. This is just a standard output jack. You might run into a stereo jack, especially on a bass guitar or something with active electronics, and there'll actually be an extra set of prongs here and 1 additional solder tab. This is for a tip sleeve style, just a guitar cable. I'll see if I can, I don't have one right next to me. There you go, here we go, yes I do. So there you go. This is a guitar cable. This is the patch cable, right? So they call this like a TS cable because the tip and a sleeve. Stereo cables or balanced cables have tip ring sleeves, so you'd see an additional black line there, and that's the additional connection on the jack. So what we're worried about on the jack is which of these is the hot and which one is the ground. It's pretty easy to tell. This is the part that the tip of your guitar cable makes contact, so that's your hot. So all you got to do is look at how the tab is shaped, and you can see it's just a bent piece of metal. So you just follow this piece of metal here. There's my hot tab. That's my ground tab. So I'm just going to take the hot, solder it to my hot here, and then solder my ground to my ground. And I'd be surprised if this took more than 15 or 20 seconds. Everything's pre-tinned, so all I have to do is apply heat to the wire, poke the wire through the hole once this melts, and then it's soldered. Alright, so that's 1 solder down, and then the second solder is going to be just as quick. I should grab my second hand for this guy. So that just helps me hold the wire in place. And this melts, and we're pretty much done. As soon as this seats the way I want it to, there we go. So these little tabs on the jack, actually have a hole in them. So when you go to put your wire in there, all you do, I'm going to turn the camera so you can see. You just poke the wire. Oh, hold on, let me move. There we go. So the wire, you just poke right through the hole in the tab. So once the solder melts, the wire pokes right through the hole, and then it holds itself in place because the solder solidifies almost instantly. That's done. So I just need to find my mounting hardware and stuff to put it back in its plate, which I've got right here. And you just put the flat washer on the outside before you put the nut on. Sometimes these are a little tricky because it's a little bit of a tight space for your fingers, but it's pretty easy to do. This does not want to go on there. There we go. Come on. Right. Do I have the wrong nut, or does this just not want to thread? Okay, that just does not want to thread. But it's the right nut, so we're just going to keep trying. And I do have a tool here, so I can always make sure I have the right one, which I do. I'll just use the tool instead, if it'll fit. Okay, sorry, this doesn't normally take this much time. This is a very unexciting part. And you really want to make sure you're spinning the nut, not the jack, because you'll twist up the wires and break them. That's the most common cause of output jacks failing, is people twisting them. Because their nut gets loose and they try to tighten it from the outside instead of taking it off, holding it in place and tightening it from the, while holding the inside still. There we go. I just want to make sure I'm not doing something stupid here. That just doesn't feel like it wants to thread, but it's the only nut here that makes any sense. But maybe I have the wrong nut, so I'm just going to double check. Make sure I didn't pick up the wrong one. It sure doesn't look like it. So I'm just going to try and get this to thread. Okay. Bear with me 1 second here. Move some stuff out of the way. I'll just make sure I didn't set it down somewhere stupid, because this just doesn't seem to want to fit. You know, I took it off myself just a little bit ago. This does not feel like the right nut. So bear with me 2 seconds. I'm going to see if I can find the right one. Nice. Thank you, Captain Howdy. Appreciate you stopping by and letting me know. I'm going to check for, I have a little parts box at my feet. And so I'm just going to make sure I grabbed the right thing, which I think I did. But this nut doesn't want to thread on to this jack, and I'm not sure what happened. So I'm just going to check my immediate surroundings and make sure I didn't set it somewhere. It's really not relevant to this whole thing. I can just continue on and leave the jack dangling. It's really not that big of a deal. I can find the right nut later because I don't want to leave you guys sitting around bored. So anyway, that's it. I mean, that's how you solder an output jack. It took me, 30 seconds. It was very, very quick. So now the next thing I want to do is string it up really fast. So I'm very quick at restringing guitars, so I'm just going to show you how I do it 6 times in a row. And then I'll run through just some very, very brief setup stuff, and then I'm done. And so then I can, oh, there we go. I just picked up my pack of strings, and the components I was looking for were sitting right there. So there we go. So we got a lock nut that goes on the inside. That goes on first, then your plate, then your flat, and then your nut that is actually the right size nut. So this is actually a lot higher quality jack. This is a Switchcraft, which is what I tend to recommend. The jack that I took out of it was a cheap Chinese piece of shit that was a smaller size nut. So that's why it was giving me fits. So that's good. I usually don't like to crank these down super, super tight. So I just tighten it with my fingers, really. And so that's it. So I've got my screws right here. Always put your screws in like a little cup or something. It'll make your life a lot easier. I'm already done with my soldering iron. Another critical thing with this that a lot of people really fuck up. pick the right screwdriver, for the love of God. I've got a whole set right here, so I'm actually going to use it instead. So I've got a set of bits right here, and all you need to do, leave the bits sitting where they are. Just don't be an idiot. Okay, you've got a really good tool at your hand here. So this is a Phillips. All I need to do is take my screw and just see which of these drivers that it fits onto the snuggest without any like movement. It's this big one right here, so this is just a number 1 Phillips head. So there you go. When you choose the correct size, you're not going to strip the thing. That's why so many people's guitars are trashed, because they don't take the time to choose the right tool and they fuck their stuff up. So don't be that guy, and don't break your own stuff. You know, just pick the right tool. So there you go. So now that's really snug and nice on that screw, and I'm pretty confident it's not going to slip now. So I just got to line up the holes here and screw her back in, and we'll just make sure this lines up. We'll be real gentle about it on that first one. Grab the next screw, throw it in, and then the input jack is completely done. It is, there you go. So start to finish, except for the part where I removed the old jack, which took literally 10 seconds. You know, that's a process I can do in 5 minutes, a lot of times, as long as circumstances are right and I actually have my setup the way I like it. Like I said, it's a mess right now. I'm in the middle of cleaning it up, but you don't need a lot of tools for this, so no big deal. So now the next thing we need to do is put the strings on it. If there's any cleaning you want to do under the string path, now is the time. Make sure that's all done. I got all the crap out from under here. You want to give your pickups a good wipe down. They're magnets. They will attract like iron filings and things like that, so it's a good idea to clean them up. There's a little bit of rust here. I'm not going to go through the trouble. A lot of times I will just replace rusty hardware. Sometimes you can oil it a little bit, but I kind of like it. On a guitar like this, it adds a little character. This is an older guitar, so I'll just leave it alone. So your strings, I use Diodarios. They're color coded. If you can't tell them apart by eye, they're color coded. I happen to have like 3 sets of machinist's calipers right here. You can get them really cheap. These are a lifesaver. So if you're not sure what this is a caliper. Okay. Some people call them a micrometer. That's splitting hairs. You turn the thing on, you open it up, it gives you a reading and tells you the size. So if you're not sure what size string you have, you use your caliper, your micrometer, and you just kind of pinch the string in between it, and there you go. So the reading that I'm getting, let me zero it out. Make sure it's zeroed, and then that string right there reads as 0.3. So once your micrometer is actually zeroed, if you don't know what size string you are, it's an instant string gauge that works on anything. So highly recommend having one if you work on guitars regularly. If you're working on a guitar for a friend and they don't know what kind of strings they bought or whatever, very, very easy to figure that out. So these things are bundled in like little courses of 2. I usually just load all my strings first, especially on a guitar like this. On a Les Paul, I would get 1 string on there just to hold the bridge in place, and then I would load the rest. But this is a Strat, so this is easy. So I take the back plate off when I do this. If it's a guitar I own, I leave the back plates off. Unless it's a cleverly designed back plate that gives you full access. So all I'm going to do is just feed my strings through the appropriate hole. And then I hope you're paying attention because this part goes very fast. I've restrung an entire guitar start to finish in under 5 minutes before. And I think my all-time best time was like 3 minutes and 40 seconds or something like that. Because we were bored around the guitar shop, and I bet the kids that were working with me that I could, and I did. So, and that's without power tools. I don't like powered string winders, unless you're dealing with an enormous fleet of guitars. If you're Joe Bonamassa's guitar tech or something like that, then yeah, powered string winder might save you some time. But I prefer the ones I use, which are the little Planet Waves or Diodario ones that I showed you before. So we got our 4th string in there already. Got to be careful when you do that. Obviously, I've got a good grip on the guitar, but it slipped off my table. So no problem. I caught it before it barely even slipped off. Okay. And so sometimes you got to cajole these strings a little bit to get them through because they like to stick on the underside of the tuning block or whatever. But we are cooking. So we're almost done. We're down to the B and the E. We'll throw the B in, we'll throw the E in, and then we'll string. B, here comes the E, and we're done. So this guitar is kind of banged up. The underside of the tremolo block's broken. Not really a big deal. What's my favorite tone wood in an electric guitar? The tone wood conversation is an interesting one. So you can definitely hear a difference, but it's about 5% of the tone. As we all know, pickups is the #1 contributing factor to tone. That's indisputable. I don't care what anybody says. And then everything else is just diminishing returns. So like the actual wood body of a guitar, it affects how lively the guitar is in your hands more than anything. So you'll feel it more than you'll hear it. Recorded, I don't know that anybody could hear the difference. But I have a solid ash guitar over there. It's got an ash body, bolt-on neck. It's the most resonant guitar I've ever heard. And it actually does translate to the tone. That was the one I was playing before. If you play like a high E octave, it just takes off into harmonics. So it's not the overall tone, but it's the way the guitar behaves in your hands that's different more than anything. There's some guitars just are kind of deader in your hands. Oh yeah, no, I'm sure it was a joke, but it's a jumping off point for me to ramble. So, you know, mahogany guitars are a little darker, ash guitars are a little snappier on the top end and a little tighter in the bass. It's a very slight difference in EQ curve, if anything. So, we already talked about the nut at the beginning. Yeah, pickups and decent hardware and setup. Setup's the most important thing, maybe even more important than the hardware. Pickups and a good setup, you can still get away with kind of shittier hardware. So like this is stock Squier Strat hardware. This thing doesn't really go out of tune. So I want to back the camera up just a touch. See my ugly mug for a second. Okay, and I'm going to scooch the guitar down so you guys can see a little bit of what I'm doing on the headstock here. Okay, sorry if the angle's weird. All right, so you're going to have to deal with that angle for a minute, but hopefully that's good. So I already pre-turned my tuner so all the holes are pointing this way. So when I go to string it, the string just goes right in. I don't fight it. I'm a big stickler for the amount of slack that winds onto the headstock. It's really easy to wind it. So you can actually use your tuners as a ruler. So what I do is I pull all the slack out of the string, every bit of it, and then I put my fingers right next to the tuning peg. On a Strat, you just go 2 tuning pegs. So I just slide my fingers down 2 tuning pegs and then pull that slack back through. And then I pin it down so the slack doesn't move. And I grab my winder and I just rip it on there. I like to let the tail go under on the first wind. So you'll see, here's the string, here's the tail. The tail's going to go under on the first wrap. As soon as it clears it, I'm going to bend this straight up and back to lock it into place. And then I'm going to use my fingers to just guide that down the post to ensure that we're finishing going down the post. And you're going to see this is going to end up basically a perfect like 2.5 to 3 winds because I measured the slack perfectly. So it fills up the tuning posts. They're not overlapping. And that's it. So then I take my string cutter and I cut this off right at the top of the tuner. I try not to leave too much string there so you don't poke yourself in the hand. And then dispose of your excess string. That's one down. So I'm just going to go fast. And if anybody has any questions, just let me know because I'm going to have this thing restrung in about, I don't know, 3 more minutes. And so I can just eyeball the slack. So I'll just sometimes just yank it through. But again, if you need to measure 2 tuning posts on a Strat, it's a tuning post and a half on a Les Paul because they're spaced out a little further. And then you just wind it on. And I will show you a close-up of what the finished string wraps look like. Bend your tail up, and then just keep ripping. So even without a power winder, which like I said, I think are a little unnecessary, you can do this really, really fast. So just cut this off. I don't like using something like a nipper that'll leave a sharp point. I like this because it kind of shears the string and makes it a little more blunt, so you're a little less likely to stab yourself in the hand with a string end. And so there we go. So we're already on to the 4th string. And so we're just going to make sure that wrap stays in place with our free hand. Make sure it goes over under. That kind of pinches the tail, so if the string slips, well, it just won't slip if you do it that way. This guitar has a string tree on it, so we're going to park the string under the tree. And we're just cooking right along. So I'm already onto the G. Now on the treble strings, I do something a little different. I take the tail and wrap it around the other way once I hit 180 degrees. So I'm going to go to the strings pointing towards the bridge. I'm going to lock everything down. I'm going to take this around the other way and back up and under, and this will lock that into place. And then on these strings, I just go strictly down the post because we're locked. So this doesn't make it any harder to take your strings off like a lot of other methods do, but it ensures that they do not go anywhere. This was like a touch more windings than I would typically like, but as long as the windings are clean, it doesn't matter. So we ended up with closer to 4 instead of 3.5. That's fine. So Strats, you always have to pull the string up so it hits the top of the block. If you don't, then it's going to move on you later and go way out of tune. So the most important thing is just making sure nothing moves. So again, here's the trick. You can see this is 180 degrees out. I'm going to grab that tail and go the other way, switch hands, and then loop it. So, and I can show that technique like in super close detail on a TikTok or something if somebody really needs it. And then I'm just using my free hand to kind of keep a little tension on this end of the string so it winds on clean. Very, very, very simple. Push it under the tree, cut off the slack, or cut off the excess, and then we're on our last string. We're pretty much done. And looking at my timer, even with me talking and going slow, this took less than 10 minutes. So again, hold your slack. Once it gets 180 around, it's kind of pinned. Lock your tail, and you're done. This is the exact method that Dan Erlewine shows in his book that Guitar Player Magazine published, and it's still in print today. I believe it's called the Guitar Player Magazine Guitar Repair Guide or something like that. It's probably in its 6th or 7th edition. I read it cover to cover when I was 18, and I still use a lot of the techniques today. It's probably the best resource for guitar players that there is with respect to this kind of thing. Dan has worked for Stuart McDonald for 30-something years. He knows his stuff better than anybody. So we're done with the stringing. So I'm going to move the phone. All right, we're going to go mobile so you guys can see. So we're going to scooch in here, and you should be able to get a good look at those wraps. So see how pristine those are? That is not going to go out of tune pretty much ever. So did I ever mess with different caps on the tone knob? Yeah, of course. So that's another part of the whole electronics equation that you can kind of play with. All right, let me get my phone back in this mount here. Sorry, guys. All right, there we go. Phone's back. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry, my phone mount pushed the power button on my phone and turned my screen off. So anyway, we're done. Anything else is kind of optional. We're just going to tune up really fast, and I'll show a quick little intonation. Now, for this kind of work, close enough is good enough for most people. However, if you're recording, being able to do this yourself is huge. So getting your intonation set right, loop it. This is especially for you since you have such good pitch. I have a strobe tuner. This is a Peterson Strobo Stomp. They make rack mount versions. Peterson's always had the best tuners out there, pretty much. So I'm just going to grab a little short cable here. That one's too short. I've got a longer one right over here. 1 second. Normally I'm a little more prepared than this, but this was fairly impromptu. So we're just going to plug the guitar in. We're going to go into the input of the Strobo tuner. It is now on. So the way a strobe tuner works is, historically, it was a rotating disc in front of a flashing light, and when the wheel stops moving, you know it's in tune. Thoughts on Peterson tuners? Peterson stuff's great. That's who made this. It's great. So all I'm going to do is, I'm setting it down on the bench here. I need to be able to see it. I want it pointed at the camera, but I also need to be able to see it. So let me see if I can put it somewhere where you guys can see it. And I can see it also. I don't know if that's going to work. All right, well, either way. So all I do is tune. I'll pick the tuner up and show it to the camera once I'm in tune. And I'm sure you can hear that I'm getting really close to being in tune. As soon as the wheel stops moving or starts reversing direction, we're there. So there we go. So an in-tune guitar, the little wheel doesn't move. Out of tune, it spins really fast. So it's actually very easy to be super, super, super precise. Another trick, use your neck pickup, kill your tone controls, and that way it kills all the harmonics and you're just getting the fundamental. So if you have a tuner that jumps, like if the needle jumps a lot when you're tuning, it's all those extra harmonics. Or you might be picking too hard, but typically it's those harmonics. So use your neck pickup if you have the option. and kill your tone controls. Now, I don't strictly like the way a perfectly in tune guitar sounds, because in Western music, thirds are not in tune; they beat. So a lot of times, I'll do a little bit of sweetening to my tuning by ear, and I tune in fourths by ear. So what I'll do is, once the guitar's in tune, if you notice your two open strings next to each other, they don't beat, meaning there's no heterodyning. The beat doesn't waver; it just kind of sounds in tune. But certain other notes beat really bad. Major thirds, like at the low end of a G chord, even when they're in tune, they clash like crazy, even though it's a major chord and it's in tune. So what I typically do on a guitar is I'll tune with a tuner, and then I'll pick something close to the key I'm in, I'll tune that note, and then I'll tune in fourths, just using open strings all the way up. I'll tune my E's together, I'll tune the E to the B, and then I'll tune in fourths to the G, and that way you don't have to worry about the major third in between these two strings, and you're done. So anyway, I'm going to finish tuning here real quick. So we're almost there. Now, the next step is stretching these babies in a little bit. Yeah, the tuning thing, man, an in-tune guitar sounds like poop. So what I do is I tune with fourths, and then I play the 5 open position chords, C, A, G, E, and D. When I found the tuning where all 5 of those chords sound the best, that's the tuning I will typically use. In the studio, I will use a different trick. I will actually look at the chords that are in the song and then sweeten specifically for those chords. That's a little anal of an approach, but it works for me. It always kind of has. So this guitar was in tune a second ago, but as we tune more strings, the neck is going to bow and make everything else go flat. So just as expected, every string now that I hit all 6 strings, all the strings are flat again. So when you tune, you always tune up to pitch. So even if you're sharp, you go down and always approach the note from flat, because we want to be applying tension to the string to slack it up onto the capstan. If you don't, there's a very good chance that it's going to slip, because if you loosen it through the nut, if there's any resistance here, it'll stick here. As soon as you bend, it'll go out of tune. Okay, so there you go. That's an in-tune E chord. So we're not done, because we have to still stretch the strings, and we'll do a quick rough intonation check. I'm not going to be crazy about it. So, good question on neck relief. We'll get there in a second. So, when you're setting up a guitar, there's an acronym to remember. It's TRAIN. It's tune, relief, action, intonation, noodle. And then you repeat. So, we're not ready to even look at the intonation until we have done the tune step, and then we go to the relief step, and then the action step. So what we're going to do is, we're almost done tuning, and then we will get to the neck relief. So perfect segue for me. Thank you. So the way I stretch strings is I use both hands. I kind of have iron hands. This will hurt you if you're not used to it. I grab the string with my fingers. I push down with my palms. So I'm pulling the strings up with my fingers into my palms, and I just stretch the entire length of the string. Depends on the type of guitar. Something with a Floyd, I basically stretch them until they stop going flat. So that went flat almost a full step just from that little quick stretch. If you take the time to do this every time you string your guitar, you'll find yourself staying in tune sooner and longer. Yeah, so many guitar players come in with unstretched strings or poorly, incorrectly strung guitars. And literally, this guitar it's like a $150 guitar, but it sounds great and it won't go out of tune because it's set up and strung properly. So we're just going to give each string a very quick stretch. I'm going to speed up a little bit here, because we're already over a half an hour, and I wanted to keep this at about an hour. So we're right on pace, but I need to pay attention. Sorry if the camera works a little seasick right now, because they're sitting on the same quote-unquote workbench, which is actually just a plastic folding table. I am going to buy a nicer workbench soon, because this thing's too big for my purposes. So I'm just going to keep stretching, and we're almost there. And anything I haven't touched on yet, it's because we're not at that part of the process yet. So we're not going to set the pickup heights till very last, because obviously you can't do that first, because you're going to be moving the strings around. So the whole point is to just not have to retrace your steps. You can do it in any other order, but you're going to keep chasing your tail. So we never, ever, ever mess with neck relief. unless it's under tension. Some guitars you have to. Old Fenders, you have to take the neck off to adjust neck relief. I hate that. I will never own a guitar that makes you do that. So you want a nice accessible truss rod hole. I'm gonna aim down a little more so you can maybe see that truss rod just a little better. There we go. Okay, so that's a good angle. So guitar's in tune, strings are stretched. And I'm trying to be perfect here with the strobe tuner just because I'm about to set the intonation. And this is something that a lot of people really screw up. So I forgot to mention there's one other tool you need for this whole process to do it right, and that is a capo. You can use anything. This is a Kaiser. They're great. Boiled linseed oil when hydrating a dry fretboard. Nah, don't need it. Not worth it. Linseed oil is too caustic. Just use this or something like it. Really any edible oil will work, but you don't want to use something that can go rancid, so stay away from olive oil and stuff like that. Lemon oil or walnut oil is what I've always used. I've tried other stuff. You know, I worked in guitar shops long enough. Every manufacturer of every product ever gave me free shit to try. Most of it ended up getting given away because it just wasn't very good. The Music Nomad stuff is spectacular. The Dunlop stuff is spectacular. That's really all I spend my own money on. And if anybody comes into the shop I'm working at and asks me, that's what I'm going to sell them. So anyway, we're ready to kind of keep rolling. So this is where things kind of go sideways on people, is setting the intonation up. They'll hit the 12th fret harmonic, and then they'll compare that against the open string. That is not intonation. The 12th fret harmonic can't be moved because it's physics. It's the halfway point where the octave note is on the guitar. It never moves. What we're actually doing when we set the intonation is we're lining up that node with the 12th fret exactly. Now, the problem with that is that makes the string in tune with itself. But on guitar, you don't play the guitar open string against that same string ever. It's impossible. So what's almost more important is that your commonly used intervals sound good, meaning fourths and fifths, and sometimes major and minor thirds. That's the most common intervals. So sometimes you'll intonate a guitar and then you'll play it and the chords kind of sound stinky, and that's because from string to string there's a little bit off there. So I will sometimes, you know, throw a couple cents sharp or flat here and there just to kind of compensate. So right now I'm going to show you here. Okay, so that guy's in tune. Strobe's not moving. Okay, I'm going to hit the 12th fret harmonic. Same exact note, it's not moving. Okay. Oh, I'm changing presets. There we go. All right, so those notes are the same. They'll always be the same. What we're worried about is very gently fretting the 12th fret note and then checking that as well. So when I do that, I can see that my disc is turning very slowly clockwise. So if it's moving counterclockwise, it's flat. If it's moving clockwise, excuse me, it's sharp. So we're going to get this perfectly back in tune. We're going to check that note one more time. That's intonating just a hair sharp. So if we're intonating sharp, that means we need to lengthen the string. So we're just going to make this saddle go backwards. So I'm going to loosen the string. We're going to grab my screwdriver that's right here, and we're just going to take this screw and tighten it, I don't know, maybe a half a turn for the amount I need to adjust. That's it. That's done. Tune it back up. So when you're setting up guitars, just get used to tuning them a whole bunch. When we're doing a Floyd Rose, it's all tuning. It's tune, stretch, tune, stretch, tune, stretch, tune, stretch. This guy could use just a little more. So we'll go ahead and give that another little cranky crank. Just a little more. So, and you're better off doing your adjustments small. So, you know, on a truss rod, 1/8 of a turn at a time or something like that. When you're doing a screw on an intonation like that, you know, 1/4 to a half turn at a time. See what that nets you, because the threading on every bridge screw is different. All right, that is close enough. I'm happy with that. When I hit it open, it wiggles a little bit, maybe moves clockwise. This guy here, when I hit it, it does the exact same thing. It wiggles a little, goes clockwise. It looks the same to me. So intonating Floyd's and edge style bridges is a lot harder. It usually requires a specialized tool, and it's a lot harder to do under tension. So there's a tool, there's a little claw that you can buy I know for Floyd Rose Originals, where it will actually hold the saddle in place. It's got a set screw. You block your tremolo or get your tremolo ideally set, check your intonation, and then you loosen the little lockdown screw that holds down the bridge saddle on a Floyd, and then you can use that little tool to put it right where you want it, and then you tighten the lockdown screw back down. So yeah, it's pretty simple with the right tools. If you don't have that tool, then you end up having to do it not under tension, which is a lot harder. As soon as you loosen that bridge saddle, it's going to snap forward, and you don't really want that. So, you know, you have to kind of either have one of those tools, or you're not going to be able to do it under tension. Every guitar is a little bit different with how you do that. I've got a few other guitars that have some other weird bridges, but it's a similar thing. Check it under tension, detune, move the saddle, retune, check it, and just repeat until you're happy. So I'm just going to blaze through the rest of them, because we're almost done. This one's really, really close, because I believe I actually already set this guitar up fully. This one could stand to come back probably a full turn. So we're just going to give this one very quick full turn. Appreciate you guys being here and asking good questions. That is more for the benefit of other people who are going to watch this later, honestly. Because there was quite a few people that I know weren't going to be able to make it. So thank you for asking good questions, because that's more stuff for people to listen to and learn when they come. So keep those questions coming. All right, so this guy is right there. Notice I'm always tuning up to pitch. We're there. D's good. D's perfect. G is pretty perfect too, honestly. I did a pretty good job when I did this last time. And I don't believe I changed string gauges. So you really want to do this anytime that you change string gauges or even string brands. You want to just take a quick pass through it and make sure this stuff's okay. Now this is a pretty fast setup. Intonation's done now too. So we're pretty much done. Pickup height would be next. I guess we could do the neck relief just to demonstrate it. So I'll get to that in a second. It looks like there's a couple more questions. What strings would I say you should stay away from? Nah, there's no such thing. Cheap Chinese stuff, you know, anything that's like online that's too cheap, you know, too good to be true kind of pricing. There's a lot of counterfeit D'Addario product out there, things like that. Again, like everything, people are going to get tired of hearing this, but they're all different tools. They all sound a little different, and they all feel a little different. Some of them have a hexagonal core, some of them have a round core. The hex core stuff tends to stay in tune better, in my opinion, and has a longer life. So pretty much everybody's using a hex core now. D'Addario were the first. I've been using them forever, and nothing has blown me away in all these years. I've tried Ernie Ball Cobalts, I've tried NYXLs, I've tried every string there is. Coated strings was a craze forever. I typically don't like them. I like the D'Addario coated strings because the coating is so light, it's all good. There's a dirty little secret in the string business where certain very popular string brands actually, like Gore, the company that owns Elixir, was like a chemical company. They came up with this coating for another completely other industry, and one of their engineers figured out, hey, we could coat we could coat guitar strings with this. So they were buying guitar strings from somebody else and then just putting their coating on, which is why they fuzz up if you've seen them. So I'm not a fan of those personally, but you know what? Like the greatest mandolin player that ever lived, Chris Thiele, is an Elixir endorsee, and that's all he'll play. So use what you like, use what's comfortable. Do whatever. Certain strings are going to sound different on different guitars. The blend of metals and stuff can be different. They're cheap. Just experiment with it. It doesn't really take much to do. It's not that hard. So relief really fast. You don't really need tools to do basic neck relief unless you're really trying to be anal about it, because you have a straight edge built into your guitar. It's called a string. So that's where the capo comes in. So if you just capo off at the first fret, because we got to take the nut out of the equation. We don't care about the nut right now. We're only checking the relief of the neck. Basically, you just have it down like this. You don't really want to have any weight on it. You want it to kind of be in playing position, and you're just going to push down the last fret and then sight the gap at approximately the 12th fret, and look and see how big that gap is. You can eyeball it very easily because you have built-in string gauges right in front of you. This is 46 thousandths, you know, and so on, all the way down to, or 46 hundredths down to, you know, 10 thousandths or whatever it is. So your optimal neck relief, there should be a gap there, but it should be very small. Maybe the size of your B string is ideal. So if you can eyeball that, you're good. This neck is actually perfectly relieved. I don't know if there's a way for me to show this, but I'm going to grab the camera, I'm going to flip it around, and we're going to try to see it. So I'm going to actually unplug from power, and I'm going to flip the camera, if I can figure out how to do that. Here we go, 1 second. Go, flip. Come on. There we go. All right, so it flipped. So now we're looking down at the 12th fret. And if I push down the last fret, you can see that gap is almost non-existent, but when I press the string down, you'll see it move ever so slightly. So that gap is probably 13 thousandths if I had to take a guess. So that's perfect. That's what we want. If your neck is bowed, that gap will be bigger. If your neck is back bowed, there will be not enough gap. So very, very easy. So I'm actually going to skip over the truss rod adjustment on this one. I'm going to do other tutorials in the future where I cover that material. But in this case, it's just not necessary. So I'm essentially done. So I hit the T in train, the R, neck relief, we just did it. Action, you know, which was, you know, setting the bridge height. I skipped over that because it was already good. Intonation we already did, and the noodle. And again, I didn't address the relief because it didn't need it. So, but if you do that stuff in that order, you've gone through all the steps. So I kind of skipped a few steps because they were unnecessary. Again, I'll be doing more of these in the future where I'll have guitars that actually need the work so I can demonstrate this properly. But that's it. This is done. Everything's good. What kind of pickups do I move towards based on winding, magnet type, or active versus passive? Again, different tools. So, you know, if you're playing metal, you probably want something wound a little hotter with a ceramic magnet versus maybe more of a classic rock thing where you'd go with an Alnico that's a little less wound. It's all just tools, man. They're fun tools. They're cool tools, but they're just tools. So, you know, this is my messy workbench. You know, I've got just like a tackle box with all my guitar tools in it. And it's all you really need. So we're pretty much done. That was really easy. So I'm going to be playing around with the neural amp model or Dumble model because this thing through that is absolutely magical. So that's how I'm going to spend the rest of my evening. So if you guys don't have any other questions, I've got about 7 or 8 more minutes I can dedicate to this. So now is a good time if there are more questions. And if not, I can just wrap this up and, you know, we'll go on to the next one. If there's anything else that you guys want to see, if there's any other questions, if, you know, there's anything like that, any of the processes that I need to go deeper in depth on, I'm more than happy to do that, you know, as long as somebody lets me know, you know, hey, free ideas for more videos. So it's cool. So anyway, I don't like dead air. And I don't see questions flying in. You guys are still hanging out, so I really appreciate you guys just kind of hanging out with me while I did this. Sounds like the stream quality on the other end was really good. I'm looking forward to kind of watching back and seeing what we did here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to doing more of this in the future. I'm probably going to be doing a lot on the Discord server, and I'll probably be doing a lot more on, you know, TikTok and probably YouTube now because they've made it a lot easier to do this content creation thing. Excuse the messy mat. Normally I would have this a little cleaner. But it's all good. So that's going to be the next thing. So, hey, thank you for stopping by, man. Everybody who was here, that was really cool. And like I said, this will be posted for other people to see later. If somebody would benefit from watching, you know, a weird idiot rant about a guitar, for an hour, you know, share it with them. I think there's some good info here. I'll try to maybe tag the relevant sections if I remember. But yeah. That's pretty much it. So, you know, anything anybody else would like to know, I'm all ears, and I'll be back doing this again soon. So I'm going to flip the camera around so I can say goodbye. So there we go. That's pretty much it. So, you know, I'm around all the time. My DMs are always open. I respond to comments, all that kind of stuff. So any questions, any videos you'd like to see me do, I'd be more than happy to. This is a really simple one. Yeah, thank you for coming, Lupit. That's awesome. So I actually do guitar tech work for people over the internet. If you have a video, the capability to do a video chat, which you do with Discord and FaceTime and all those other things, you know, if you get me on a camera and I can see what you're doing, all I need is a set of hands and a set of eyes and a set of ears on the other end. And, you know, I can walk people through setting up their own guitars. Sometimes just having somebody who knows what they're doing there to reassure you that you're not going to break your stuff is all you need. I've done it countless times. I'm probably going to be doing it again in the future. So, that's pretty much it for me tonight. Thank you all for hanging out. That was really fun for me too. And now I have a Strat to play with that is actually going to work. The output jack was jacked up and ruining my good time. So not acceptable. Now it's fixed. And it didn't take hardly any time at all. So yeah, we'll definitely see you guys around. And again, let me know if there's anything else you guys want to see. Oh, hey Brian, I didn't see you there. Appreciate the view. Appreciate you hanging out. And yeah, I'll see you guys around. For those of you that are in the Discord, the secret one, you know which one I'm talking about. I'll see you guys there. I'll probably be chopping it up with you guys in a few minutes. So thank you for hanging out. I appreciate you guys doing a little quality control. This is the first time I've actually streamed to YouTube Live using this specific app. I think I've used their old app a long time ago, but this new one actually is really nice to use. So it's encouraging me to want to do this exact thing more, because when it's an easy experience, it's great. So I'm going to work on getting the studio cleaned up a little more this weekend, and then I've got all kinds of content coming. Plug-in reviews, guitar reviews. I've got a brand new guitar that I think people want to hear about. So yeah, I'm just going to be doing that kind of content, and then just whatever else people want. Just trying to be a resource for people. I'm old. I've done this a million years. So anyway, I'm going to shut up now. You guys have a great night. Thank you for coming. I'll see you soon.